Hello, hello, welcome. Good afternoon. Please type in the chat where you're joining from today and how many people are watching with you. And if you're able, please acknowledge the native land which you occupy. And we'll shout those out as you join us and fill this room in the chat. I already see that Timothy is here from Orlando, Seminole Territory. Liz in Westchester, Council of the Three Fires. Thank you, Liz. Morris is here from Berwyn. Also the Council of the Three Fires, Martha in Long Beach, California, Chinook Territory, Unrecognized Tribal Authority. Great. Others, we would love to see you fill this room with us. Jordan in Chicago, just Jordan. Thank you. I know there's more folks coming on in. I know we have a lot of people registered today. I'm expecting a great conversation with a wonderful panel and a great facilitator. Great. Jordan's in Logan Square. Please, if you're just joining us, check in. Where are you coming from today, including the native land which you occupy, and how many are with you? Grace in Chicago. Thanks, Grace. Okay, I will keep us moving. Oh, Minnesota. Great. Thanks, Minnesota, Ukrainian Village. Claire, just you. Thanks, Claire. All right, I will move us forward, but please keep checking in. I'm Anna Garcia Doyle, the Executive Director of One Earth Collective, which produces the One Earth Film Festival. Welcome to this festival screening event. We hope it will provide us all with rich opportunities for learning, a brave and safe space for important conversations, and a way to move from inspiration to action. We could not do this work without the support of our sponsors and partners, so thank you to the Environmental Law and Policy Center and Green America. Another quick note, if your circumstances allow, please donate to support One Earth's nonprofit year-round screening events, youth programs, and more at oneearthfilmfest.org. We gratefully welcome you to One Earth's 11th festival season, and we invite you to join us in turning the tide on our climate crisis. The festival uses the power of film to create a sea change on topics of environment and those intersected with environment, like racial, social, and economic justice. This year, we've adapted a hybrid format where all screenings are virtual, with some accompanying in-person events taking place in the Chicago area. Whether live or virtual, we remain committed to our unique model of gathering and community to raise awareness of the issues, engage in dialogue, and be inspired to act. A powerful image and call to collective action in light of this year's festival theme, Turn the Tide, are the words of Japanese writer Ryanosuke Satoru. Individually, we are one drop. Together, we are an ocean. Our event will take place in 4 parts. Soon, we'll introduce you to some folks who will help us have a rich discussion after the film. Then, we'll watch the film together. After the film, we'll unpack its themes in a facilitated dialogue with our panelists. Please use the chat to share your thoughts, ideas, or questions. We'll end by sharing concrete actions you can take to be part of the solution. These suggested actions come from our panelists and action partners. I'd now like to make a few brief acknowledgments. The first is that as we reframe narratives around justice, environment, and equitable solutions to our climate crisis, we acknowledge the many filmmakers, film subjects, facilitators, and panelists joining this and other fest events. Thank you. Your wisdom and experiences help us spark and sustain actions for the protection of our One Earth and for the just treatment of its resources and its people. The second acknowledgement is that One Earth Collective is based in Chicago, the traditional homelands of the Council of the Three Fires, the Odawa, Ojibwe, and Potawatomi nations, and home to many other tribes, including today, peoples from over 100 tribal nations. Despite this, there are currently no federally recognized tribes in Illinois, due in part to colonization, relocation, and genocide. One Earth sustains its commitment to presenting films that center Indigenous stories and voices. We believe that beyond acknowledging the native lands we each occupy, we must lift up Indigenous voices and support the work of First Nations groups. If you're in the Chicago area, please support the important work being done by the American Indian Center Chicago, the Chicago American Indian Community Collaborative, Chi Nations Youth Council, and others. And watch for the Field Museum exhibition, Native Truths, Our Voices, Our Stories, co-curated with collaborators from more than 100 tribes, opening this May. A third acknowledgement is that shared agreements can help keep our conversations safe and respectful. Please observe the following agreements when participating. Put aside your preconceptions, acknowledge your privilege, internalize what you've learned, approach the conversation with respect, engage your active listening, use I statements, and get comfortable with your own story. One last thing before we meet our facilitator and program participants. If you're active on social media, tell people that this is happening. Amplify these voices and be a part of the community we're building here together. The hashtags for the festival are hashtag OEFF 2022 and hashtag Turn the Tide. And now I'd like to turn it over to our facilitator to introduce themselves, the panelists, and our film.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Howard Lerner. I'm the Executive Director of the Environmental Law and Policy Center, headquartered here in Chicago and working around the Midwest and nationally to help solve our climate change problems. I'm joined by a great panel today. Olivia Knight from As You Sow, Todd Larsen from Green America, and Destiny Vasquez. Destiny, you'll see in the film Let Us Breathe. So keep your eyes open in the film for Destiny. And after the film, we'll have a chance to talk for a little bit. We'll have a conversation with Destiny and Olivia and Todd. And we also invite your comments through the chat. Let us know if there's some things you'd like to weave into the conversation. And I'll do my best job to keep it lively and fun and interesting. All right. So welcome, Destiny, Olivia, and Todd. And let's see what's a very, very important and very good film. Wow. That is really as impressive as it looked. I mean, sometimes you have a story and the story is sort of embellished. This really happened. It's happening now. It's a tremendous victory for the community on the Southeast side. And I'm glad you've all been able to watch and sort of learn what's going on. Usually I start off by saying congratulations to the filmmakers, because this is a film festival and they've done a terrific job putting together this film. But in this case, it's congratulations to the filmmakers and also congratulations to Greg and Destiny and all the others who were involved in the Southeast Side community in terms of shutting down the General Iron plant. So we have with us today Destiny Vasquez, who you saw in the film, Todd Larsen of Green America, and Olivia from As You Sow, Olivia Knight. I'm sorry, Olivia. Let's talk a little bit about this. And Destiny, why don't we start with you? Because it's a powerful story. It was a strong, effective fight. It's still going on. You were right in the middle of it. Everybody saw you in the film. What's happening next? Tell us a little bit about not just what happened, but what's going to happen next. And how's the community organizing to make sure that the victory stays as a victory?
So we just got word recently, like last month, that General Iron is officially denied. Because back then, only one of the permits were denied, which was still an ongoing fight from then. So just like last month, we actually celebrated and looked into more stuff on how other stuff is still affecting our community, because we still have a lot of pollution over here. We have lead contamination. I think we have magnesium somewhere near the bridge. So we're looking into building more green spaces in our school. Our ventilators are really bad, so we're looking into funding new schools and everything to help our area. So yeah, that's a little update and more stuff we're trying to do for the community recently.
Tell us a little bit about your experience, Destiny. I mean, some of it was in the film, but what wasn't in the film that was really cool, that you thought was really important?
What wasn't in the film?
What wasn't in the film?
Oh, we did hunger strikes. We did more protests. We went to Dr. Arwadi's house. I don't know if any of you know who she is, but she was heavily involved with it. So we did a lot, and the hunger strike really was a lot, especially because I was involved with it as a student. I couldn't do it for a lot of days because my experience was really bad. It affected my mental health, my physical health. It affected my education because I'm doing this for my education since it was located right next to my school. The building is still there that they were building for with all the permits. So we're still working on whatever's happening with that building. We're trying to figure out.
Talk a little bit about just what you see happening in the community in the next 5-10 years. And particularly, what was the role? I mean, this was a film about high school students. There are a lot of other people in the community involved. What was the particular role, of youth, young environmentalists? How did that play out?
Oh, we were in school while doing all this. It was a lot. We were all in school organizing all this. We were all hosting events like canvassing, a lot of protests, like a lot. I got a lot of cardio that year. So we're doing all that about canvassing, organizing these events, doing a lot of research on this while we're doing research for like research projects in our school too.
Did you get credit or something for it? I hope.
Maybe like
did you get a paper out of it?
I got papers out of it. I just finished a research paper off of it. I did pretty okay. But while doing all that, we were on the front lines of all the protests and we got opportunities out of it, meeting a lot of great people. Even my most important people that I hold as family and dear to me, I met throughout that. I got to meet with DSA, Democratic Socialists of America. I got to know all that and what they're working with. And I got to look into chapters for different high schools. And I see that in like 5 to 10 years, I see a lot of organizing and activists this year because I just held a panel inside of my school last week of talking in front of students in my school of General Iron. And a lot of them seem interested in it and interest in activism and how to get started. So I see it like a new generation. As I've been told throughout all this work, we are the future and we are what's going to happen in our future and what we're going to fight for. I see a lot of strong people who are willing to step up, even in different issues that may have not happened yet.
I always love it because I believe you're right. You are the future. On the other hand, that's not an excuse for people like me to say, oh, just leave it to the young people. We don't have to do something. We are. And let's see if we can turn a minute over to Todd and Olivia, because one of the themes in here, Destiny, in this film, the work you've been doing in the community, and what we'll see in the next film is that of corporate overreach. And Green America, where Todd works, and As You Sow, where Olivia works, does a lot of work on corporate America and how sometimes there's an overreach. Todd and Olivia, do you want to talk about that a little bit in the context of this film and follow up on Destiny?
Sure, yeah. And first of all, congratulations again to Destiny and all the folks who were so successful in organizing this particular project and shutting it down. That's such a significant victory. And yeah, I mean, all the time we see this with large corporations. Overreach is almost like a euphemism in a way for saying that corporations, they basically create what they call externalities as they do their business. But what this means is they put all of the negative impacts of their business onto communities. And almost always those are communities of color around the United States, they're tribal communities, they're Latino communities, they're Black communities. And those communities often receive the pollution and all of the waste that comes from these companies. And you often see these higher rates of cancer that was discussed in the movie and other diseases, lung diseases and so forth. And so I think we all have an obligation to push back against these large corporations and tell them enough is enough. You can't sacrifice people's health for your profits. It's so important to do that. And that was so exciting to see in this film.
Yeah, going off of what Todd said, I completely agree. It's so exciting to see young people mobilizing to make change. At As You Sow, we just incorporated an environmental justice lens and environmental justice metrics into our racial justice scorecard because you really can't talk about one without another. And when we go into these corporate conversations, we are unfortunately getting met with a lot of questions about what is environmental racism and why is environmental justice in a racial justice scorecard. And so having these conversations has been so vital and so important. And we're really seeing that overreach in environmental issues. And so these metrics are starting to track exactly what a company has been doing for the past 5 to 10 years. And it's been great to share that publicly so that we can really look under the hood at how companies have been treating BIPOC communities and start those conversations and start taking action at a shareholder and consumer level. So thank you, Destiny. It's a pleasure to be on this panel with you.
Hey, let's see if we can just continue a couple of things that have come up in the chat or that other people are raising. Olivia, as your organization works on corporate campaigns and issues around the country, how are the tactics that were adopted in the Southeast side that are in the film that Destiny's been talking about? How typical are they? How unusual are they? Give us a sense of how this fits in with national campaigns.
They are getting more typical. So as you saw, is starting to make connections with grassroots organizations, with community movements like Destiny's, to really elevate those voices into corporate meetings and get that voice heard through shareholder engagements and interactions. So most recently, we filed a climate justice resolution with Kinder Morgan based on Dutchtown, St. Louis. It's a BIPOC community, predominantly Black. They've been plagued with environmental health issues for years, but Kinder Morgan, which has a facility there, hasn't responded to any of their calls. So we were able to step in and get that community a meeting with Kinder Morgan, really get that conversation moving in a right direction. And that's been fabulous. We are hoping to make more of those connections, and I would love to work with Destiny and in any type of way, as you so would love to make that connection and really move this along where we can, because we know that engagements like this with companies are the future. We need to start having more of these because that shareholder pressure is key.
It's sort of interesting. As You Sow does a lot of work, as you've been talking about, Olivia, using shareholder pressure. Todd, Green America does a lot of work using consumer pressure. How does that align in cases like this? What are the things you do that are sort of the consumer side of the good shareholder work Olivia was just talking about?
Yeah, absolutely. Corporations care deeply about what their share owners think of them, and they care deeply about what their consumers think of them. Because obviously their share owners are investing in them and they need those investments. Their consumers are buying from them. They need people to buy from them. So these are two powerful forces that together can put a lot of pressure on corporate bad actors. And at Green America, we do a lot of campaigns, and we do them with allies. We do them with small groups across the country. And the idea is if you can get thousands of consumers aware that a company is a problematic actor, and they share it with thousands more people, and they share it with thousands more people, what that does is it makes the corporation very afraid that their name is getting affiliated with the fact that they're a really bad actor, and people will not want to buy from them so much, and they'll start to lose market share. And it doesn't take that much consumer action for us to be able to start talking to a corporation at this point, because they know it's going to keep snowballing. And at the same time, if the share owners are putting pressure on the same corporation saying, hey, we own stock in this corporation, we have a strong voice here, and we're really concerned as share owners with what you're doing, and we think it's going to affect the future profitability of this company and hurt your share owners if you keep doing this. Those two forces together often can get a corporation to move. And we've seen it time and time again, and it's increasing too, that we see companies acting faster now.
Hey, could you all talk a little bit about how social media is changing the way campaigns like this get done? Destiny, how are you and the people in the community using social media as part of this campaign? And then how does As You Sow do that, Olivia? And Todd, how does Green America use social media? 10 years ago, 15 years ago, we didn't really have that tool. It sounds like it was forever ago, but it was pre-Twitter, pre-LinkedIn. Facebook was just sort of starting. TikTok didn't exist. A lot of the tools that people use today are really pretty new. So, Destiny, can you talk about how people were using social media? And then Olivia and Todd, how your organizations do it.
The way I seen young people or people my age used it, I'm a part of this organization. It's called Youth Leadership Council. We spread knowledge. We do like little infographics with knowledge to spread awareness over what's happening. We did that a lot, and then we did little posters for our protests to reach out. We even slapped them all over our school after we did them all online, had them everywhere on social media. We reached out to more people. Whoever commented on our post, we reached out to them. It's like, do you want to know more? Are you interested in knowing this? Do you have a friend? Do you want to share any of this with a family member? And then even like we reached out to other organizations throughout social media and created a blend with other organizations. That's how I met DSA and other sort of way. I got to know a lot of other people throughout that and their work, and got to help with their work. They got to help with our work. It was Social media is a really great thing to do and have during times like this and situations like that.
Yeah, social media. Oh,
yeah.
Sorry.
No,
Sorry.
go ahead. Olivia, microphone to you and then to Todd.
Wonderful. Yeah, social media is a great tool to have these days. And as you so is getting more and more involved in social media. What we're doing is tagging companies in our posts. So we post a lot of informational tools related to our work. I lead the Racial Justice Initiative, which creates a scorecard on the Russell 1000. But we also have a wealth of ESG data focused on climate, environmental health, and social media is one of the ways that we share that with a broad network of folks. And when companies see our social media posts, when they see that they're tagged in as bad actors, it really makes them take stock and know that they need to communicate with As You Sow to get better on their policies and practices, or look internally to really understand what they're doing wrong and how they can remedy that down the line.
Yeah, I would agree with both what Destiny and Olivia just said. Social media is one of the main tools in the activist toolbox at this point. You can't run a campaign without doing some social media, and at Green America, we use it all the time as well. We have like 300,000 followers or so on social media. And part of what we do with that is we do pick up campaigns and activism from around the country. And we take that and we share it back out to our audiences, who in turn share it to their audiences and so forth. And that's the power of social media, and where everybody watching this movie right now can take part. Because the more that posts are shared and the more that they're commented on, the more they're engaged with, the more powerful those posts are. And we hear from companies all the time. You know, I saw that post you put out about us this past weekend. You got our attention. What is it that you want to talk about? And it really works. And so that combined with earned media, you know, getting into the press, doing those protest actions like the students did, those live protest actions, nothing can replace that. The hunger strikes, just having all of those tactics together, working in conjunction with each other is just so powerful.
All right, we're going to wrap up with the lightning round. Ready? 15 seconds, just last things, comments, observations. We'll go Todd, Olivia, and Destiny. Okay? Closing comment on this one?
Say to everybody watching this film that you are powerful, that average people standing up for themselves and for their communities is where so much of the environmental movement and the environmental justice movement come from. And don't ever think that you don't have a voice and can't use it, because you can. And you just saw how effective that could be in this movie.
Great last comment, Todd. I got to agree. You have a voice, use it, educate yourself, mobilize your communities, and really make a change in your daily life. Environmental justice is key, and we need to keep these conversations going. We need to bring this to anyone that will listen and make them listen.
Okay, Destiny, wrap it up. It's your community.
Yeah, I say even if you aren't out in front, like all of us are in the back organizing or giving pressure as consumers or shareholders, you could do a part in just spreading the word around or educating are just letting some people know about events like these, are just coming to help get to know event like these, or supporting event like these. Yeah.
All right. Congratulations to the people in the community and all the allies in Chicago who've achieved a tremendous success. It's not over yet, but a lot of progress, major success so far, and let's make it stick. Congratulations to the filmmakers. I mean, let's recognize the people who put this film together. Bravo. And thank you to Destiny, Olivia, and Todd. We're going to segue to the next film, The Campaign Against Climate. Destiny, Todd, and Olivia will be joining us after the film for some more conversation like this. And we have a short intro to the film that's coming, I think. So get ready. The Campaign Against Climate. What, if you will, the folks who want to stop climate action are doing to help make it harder for us to change the world. Then let's talk about it. Well, folks, what are we going to say about that? All right. What I find to be most stunning about this is we learned from the tobacco campaigns what the roadmap was, as the movie describes. And the climate change oil companies repeated a lot of that. But what they were trying to do is persuade the American public that science doesn't matter, that everything we learned in high school and college about science was somehow wrong. Think about it just for a minute, who your science teachers were. Your science teacher in junior high and high school, this wasn't somebody you saw as being political. These were people who were political activists or people who were, political science professors. They were sometimes a little nerdy. They might take you out into a field or someplace to sort of look at how plants were growing. You'd be in a lab and they'd be mixing things around and all sorts of neat things would happen, electrolysis and all that. The oil companies were out to persuade the American public that science is wrong. And they got away with it for a while. And that's what Nana Oresti's point was at the end. If they delayed us for 20, 30 years, the consequences in terms of climate are distressing and catastrophic. All right, so first of all, let's thank the filmmakers for the work they did on this. It's really a terrific piece. And thank you to One Earth Film Festival for bringing it to people's attention. We're rejoined by the panel who got together earlier, Destiny Vasquez, who's a community activist and a youth leader on the southeast side of Chicago, Olivia Knight with As You Sow, and Todd Larsen with Green America. Let's talk a little bit about this and just get a sense of, Olivia, Todd, your organizations spend their time taking on corporate overreach. You've both spent a lot of time trying to organize shareholders, Olivia at As You Sow, to combat some of the misinformation from the oil industry, and Todd at Green America organized consumers to fight back. When you see a film like this, how do you react? What do you think? What have you done, and what are you going to do next? Go ahead, Olivia, then Todd.
Right, sounds good. Well, this film was absolutely fantastic. It was shocking, but not necessarily surprising. Our work at As You Sow, we try and counter corporate disinformation by challenging corporate policies and practices through shareholder resolutions. And we regularly see this happening through corporate advertising, through lobbying practices. And so we really need some type of regulation to stop false advertising. And As You Sow is trying to lead that conversation and get companies and shareholders, consumers to understand that what's happening behind closed doors, those lobbying practices need to be exposed. We need more transparency. So if anything, after watching this film, it just shows that As You Sow has more work to do. We need to get companies and individuals to be more transparent about what's been happening on environmental justice, on on climate justice, on climate change, and we need to be able to see and monitor corporate progress on these issues. I'll throw it over to Todd.
Thanks, Olivia. Those were amazing points. I think I would just add to that the lies that the industry told are not over. The industry continues to tell lies. So they lied about climate change itself and the fact that it's happening for decades, which is we saw stall progress. But now they don't so much lie about the fact that climate change is real or caused by humans, because they know that they really can't do that anymore because nobody is really buying that line anymore. So instead, what they've done is change their arguments to say that, yeah, climate change is real, but we still need energy independence in the United States. The only way you're going to get that is through oil and gas. There's no other way to be an energy independent country. Or we need to build strong, healthy communities. Believe it or not, they say this. So we need oil and gas and those revenues to build those communities. We need jobs in the United States. So we need pipelines and we need to drill more because it provides America's jobs. It's the backbone of America. So that's become their messaging. And they've changed so that they actually now use a lot of social media too, just like we do. They are really using social media now to directly reach people. And that's the key thing, is they spend millions of dollars every year. Exxon alone spends $10 million a year to reach people on social media with targeted messages that they know are going to work with those folks and mobilize them to get them angry and get them active to try and push for fossil fuels. And so they've really become very, very sophisticated in their techniques. And like Olivia says, we have to fight back. We have to use all the tools we have, the consumer pressure, the share owner pressure, social media, earned media. We have to use all of it to push back against them.
Hey, Destiny, when you saw, the film about climate change and what the large oil companies were doing, how did that feel? I mean, obviously, General Iron's not a large oil company, but General Iron presents all sorts of other pollution problems in the Southeast Side community. How do you look at those two together? What was your reaction to the film?
I wasn't that surprised because I've known this went on, especially because right when General Iron was denied, our alderwoman, she came after all the science involved and said they only did it for politics and money, and that they were only listening to what the people had to say, and that the science was actually backed up, and calling out all the science and it all fake. And especially when the EPA department got involved, she just kept saying it was all fake news, that it wasn't dependable. So I wasn't really surprised by this, because a lot of people just deny it all for money, all for the industries, all to have more jobs, even though they do harm you in the end. So that did hit a little too close, but that does hit a little too close for a lot of people, especially considering the pipelines that were mentioned.
So talk a little bit, if you would, Todd, Olivia, Destiny, about faced by this sort of massive corporate power of the oil industry, what are the tools that regular folks can use to fight back? How do we do it? How do we play to win when it comes to climate action?
Well, I would say for everyday folks like us, there's some powerful things that we can do. One of which is to fight disinformation in our own lives and in our communities. So putting out accurate climate information to your networks and your communities using social media, it actually works. There's some really good research showing that when people see real facts about climate change and solutions, that the solutions actually work. That when you poll them later, they're more supportive of legislation to move climate action forward. So it actually is effective. Combating disinformation is actually effective when you show that the facts that people are putting out are wrong. And people see that, and it actually influences them as well. Obviously, voting is always so important. And calling your legislators, particularly at the state and local level, they don't usually hear from a lot of people. So if you actually are articulate, you're making your points really well about why they need to act on climate or other issues, they actually are going to listen, because they don't usually hear from very many people. So these are all ways that we can all be active.
I agree with Todd on those. To add in a few more, divestment, corporate engagements, engage with companies where you can, how you can. So whether that be as a consumer or an investor, and really mobilize your community around true and accurate facts.
Talk a little bit, if you would, Destiny, what was it you saw in the film that just really stuck with you?
That whole film really stuck with it, especially because I tried to watch it before and I really liked it. So rewatching it now, I notice more and little details. And what really stuck to me is how the Harvard scientist, when noticing how the pattern is of all these great scientists who won all the Nobels, also went through this, spreading out information, got attacked and called out for being a liar, and it wasn't true. All that really stuck to me because these are people who study all this, who put all their time and effort into learning all this, who won Nobel Prizes concerning all this, and they still got called out saying it was lies. And the fact that these are all true and people only want to hear what they want to hear sometimes and don't want to actually face and acknowledge the truth of what is happening in the world.
Okay, I'm going to turn now to a number of questions that are popping up from the audience. And let's see if, one of you can take each one of them. There have been some splits among the oil companies, right? They're not all quite on the same page today that they were all on when the film was made. How are you seeing, and Olivia, maybe this one is best for you. How are you seeing the oil companies start to take different positions? And then Todd, if you want to talk a little bit about just how about the non-oil companies, the coal companies that are trying to hang on? What's going on over there?
Yeah, so it's been particularly interesting engaging with oil companies over the past few years. We're seeing, especially on social justice issues, so we're seeing some companies come out really strongly in favor of racial equity and building in policies and practices around diversity, equity, and inclusion, and saying that's spreading into their policies around climate change, saying that they're going to take environmental justice and climate justice more seriously. But at this point, it's all lip service. We don't know what they're actually doing behind the scenes because there's not enough transparency there. There's not enough disclosure. So what we're doing is we're pressuring for that disclosure and that transparency so that we can really start to monitor what's happening and keep up with them through consumer and shareholder change.
Yeah, I would totally agree with what Olivia just said, that there is a complete lack of transparency, not just in the oil and gas sector, across most of corporate America. There's a desperate lack of transparency. So you keep hearing across all these sectors that we're going to adopt net zero targets as a corporation. We're going to get down to net zero, which sounds really good until you realize that they're not being very transparent about what that means. They don't mean they're going to completely zero out their climate emissions as a corporation. In the case of oil and gas companies, at best, what they're trying to say is that we're going to not produce emissions from drilling for oil. But the actual oil that we sell, well, we're not accounting for any of that. So that's like the bulk of their emissions. It's like 99% of their emissions or 95% of their emissions are from the oil they sell. But they're not talking about that. They're not going to zero out those emissions. They're just going to zero out their operations. So you have to be really careful the way they lie these days about the progress they're making. ExxonMobil, despite its statements about investing in green technologies, has produced 0 kilowatts of renewable energy. That's true. Up until the year 2020, 0 kilowatts of renewable energy. And you look at the coal companies and they say, we're investing in solutions. We're going to be cleaner. But what they're really saying is that we're going to continue to destroy communities through mining. We're going to continue to harm communities through the coal waste that we produce, the air quality that we destroy, and maybe we'll pump some of the carbon underground, even though that technology doesn't really work and is hideously expensive. Even if you could try to make it work, they're trying to claim that that's what they're going to do. At the same time, they're spending money behind the scenes to kill bills like Build Back Better and destroy any chance this country has for rapid movement on climate change through legislation.
There was a question that was raised about what's the status of the litigation involving Exxon from Jennifer. That lawsuit is going forward, the one that was brought by the New York Attorney General and by some of the other attorneys general. There are also a number of lawsuits that have been brought by municipalities. They're at very different stages of litigation. Some of them are going forward. Some of them have gotten sort of side railed. Okay, but it's hard. It's a hard one, Jennifer, for me to answer in terms of it's not just one lawsuit. There are a lot of different things going on involving the different oil companies. A question that was being asked here by Ed from Port Townsend, Washington. How do we engage and begin moving the more conservative members of Congress? What do people have in mind in terms of possibilities on that?
I could say a few words, and then Olivia and Destiny could say a few more. But there are conservative members of Congress that can move on certain climate issues. And part of the reason for that is that a number of the more conservative members of Congress represent states in the middle of the country. Those states are actually very rich in renewable energy resources, a lot of solar, a lot of wind potential. So you can get those folks on board with tax incentives and other incentives to ramp up solar and wind power. And they have actually come on board for those things. At the same time, they're supporting the oil and gas sector as well. So that's our big problem, is that, yes, you can get them on board for some of the solutions, but at the same time, they're also driving some of the problems at the same time. So I think what we have to do is actually get more of their constituents on board and more of their constituents to recognize the risk of climate change and the benefits of the solutions and the problems with continuing to support the oil and gas industry if we're going to see progress.
Jim from Oak Park is asking, how do we limit the regulated industries from populating the regulatory commissions in government that are supposed to be regulating them? In other words, how do you avoid the fox guarding the hen house? I think I know who the Jim is from Oak Park, perhaps. The answer is we have a real problem there, folks. As you look at places like the public utility commissions, you're seeing right now some senior executives of Exelon, of Commonwealth Edison, going to trial. They've been indicted by the federal government for conflicts of interest and for corruption. We're looking at corruption issues where the federal government's been bringing actions in Ohio. One of the leading utilities, First Energy, $4 million payment to a gentleman named Sam Randazzo within a month of when Sam Randazzo became chair of the Public Utility Commission. I mean, come on. You're paying the new chair $4 million right before he goes on the commission. And in Wisconsin, we're dealing with the commissioner who was regularly on the phone in meetings, texting back and forth with the utilities that he was regulating. This is a systemic problem. If we want clean energy, we need clean government. And this is one that the environmental community, the consumer community, the grassroots community has to get much more focused on. Because really, one of the biggest impediments right now to clean energy accelerating are the problems we're having in terms of clean government and the corruption. Some questions about where do people get indisputable information? I'm not sure you can ever get indisputable information, but you can look with a lot of common sense to who do you trust and why do you trust them? There's some questions here about whether the news media has some responsibility. Matt raises this question about giving the climate deniers a platform. Olivia, Destiny, Todd, any of you want to comment on that? Should the news media have been giving, some of the folks who are in the film less of a platform?
Absolutely. Definitely giving them less of a platform. But if you look at American news right now, it is structured in a very strange way. So we can say that we want to give them less of a platform, but there will always be a way that people can spout disinformation. And so we as individuals need to be educated, and we need to get a diverse source of information and really share that with our friends and family and spread the word that what you hear isn't always true. And we really need more transparency in our media and across all sources to understand what we believe. Destiny, I'd love to hear from you on this.
I completely agree with all of what Olivia and Todd just said. No matter what, there is going to be disinformation wherever, all platforms. There are a lot of sources that you can't trust, but then there's a lot of resources where you can look into, and like Olivia just said, look into diverse resources. If you see a resource, look for others to see if that backs them up. And if you want to make a point, see of other points that backs it up or similar ones, and just look into all the resources you can and everything you can, and just try to get the true facts and statements that you do know out there. Yeah.
You know, one of the real problems is the structural issue, and Olivia alluded to this. But the way news is made is media wants both sides of a debate. So if there are 100 people saying one thing and 2 people saying something else, inherently what you'll see in the news is here's one side, here's the other side. And it's not always communicated, that sort of imbalance in terms of how many people are lined up and how many experts on one side versus the other. Todd, it sounded like you had a comment as well.
Yeah, no, I totally appreciate what you just said, Howard, because there's this thing in media where they do say they need to provide balance and fairness to all sides, and it's not really doing their job, because if they know one of the sides is lying, they need to call that out, not just give them a platform. The other piece is the media really likes novelty. So if something sounds novel or different or like it couldn't be true, they actually give a lot of voice to that. It's not backed up by anything, but they'll still give a platform to it. And I think as we talk about media too, we just can't ignore the role of social media here, because those platforms are where a lot of the disinformation gets a real life as well. And what we're seeing is that despite what corporations like Facebook, otherwise known as Meta, tell us about how they're looking for climate disinformation, actively searching for it and trying to take it down. If you actually look at the statistics, it's just not borne out. They're a major driver of climate disinformation, just like they're a major driver of disinformation in general.
I'm going to address a couple of the questions that have been raised because I can do them and make sure we get some responses to folks. Sarah says she's a new PhD student. She wants to know about what work has been done on corporate disclosures around climate-related financial risks. Sarah, a couple things you might do. First, take a look at the Carbon Disclosure Project. They do excellent work, Carbon Disclosure Project. And then take a look at what Green America and As You Sow are doing. A lot of excellent work among them on the corporate disclosure around financial risks. That really is much of what both organizations are doing. So check out their websites and the Carbon Disclosure Project. Another question, has the Biden administration been able to reverse some of the Trump administration policies? Yes, not all. And some of them, they need to do more and they need to do much quicker. But part of the difficulty is in our legal system, the Administrative Procedure Act tends to slow things down. And that's the law that the US EPA has to follow. Now, that helped us when the Trump administration was in office. They tried to take some shortcuts. They were sued by environmental groups, and they were stopped from moving forward on some things. And then some of the things they wanted to do just took them too long to do under the Administrative Procedure Act. They didn't get to do. Now, the flip side of that is it slows down what the Biden administration can do. So you saw President Biden the first couple of days of his administration issue a series of executive orders and move that very, very quickly. You're seeing a number of the rulemakings involving air pollution move much more slowly through the process. But they're moving it, and there's some very, very good people at the US EPA right now. Some of this is getting slowed down by the States of North Dakota and West Virginia, and 2 large coal companies, North American Coal and Westmoreland Coal, sued to stop the EPA, essentially from moving forward on climate change standards for coal plants and natural gas plants. Surprised a lot of people. The U.S. Supreme Court took up that case. Full disclosure, the Environmental Law and Policy Center is in the case. We're there to protect the public in terms of climate change. The court heard oral argument a couple weeks ago. It looked for a ruling by the end of June. And that's there's a lot of pessimism around what the Supreme Court will do. And it seems at least some of the justices, not all, but some of them, are out of touch both with science and with the imperative that we move forward with climate change solutions and do it soon. Let's see if we can just raise a couple more questions for all 3 of you to address. And Destiny, we'll sort of start with you, then Olivia, then Todd this round. What did you learn in the General Iron case, in the climate change work, Olivia and Todd, about how do you combat corporate disinformation? How did that happen, Destiny, on the Southeast side? And then Olivia and Todd, what are your best tools and techniques and strategies?
That's a lot. So with the disinformation, but we handled it as like little infographics that we mentioned earlier, and giving a lot of our information out that we do know that is true and is backed up, along with all the links of the resources we found, and throwing all the resources in, giving all the words out, even like canvassing with little like, call your alder person, or here are some more information on it. You want to sign up? Do you want to know more stuff about this? Do you want to participate in more stuff like this, of knowing the true information? Or do you want to help get all this out here? You want to sign up for more canvassing activities and education. We organized a lot of stuff around education events, of little tabling ones, of people just walking up to tables, getting to know stuff, signing up stuff, getting to know what we did, how do we know of the stuff that we were involved in, the statistics, almost a lot of everything revolving a lot of researching. So yeah, pass it on.
Thanks, Destiny. So in general, As You Sow encourages all people to educate themselves daily on the ways that corporate money is involved in people's everyday lives and the unknowing ways that you may be supporting causes that go directly against your values. We encourage people to check out our tools, Invest Your Values, the Racial Justice Scorecard, our climate and energy work, to really know what companies are doing and how they've been showing up for BIPOC communities in the past 5 to 10 years. If we understand more about a company's track record, we can break down those conversations and really figure out most likely what's going on behind the scenes and what we as individuals can do to change that.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree with everything that Destiny and Olivia have said. We found with corporate disinformation that it's really important to get out there and directly contradict what the corporation says. So we say quickly what the disinformation is, but then move directly into what the real facts are. Because you don't want to give the corporate disinformation argument any weight. You want to take people to the truth and give them the real facts, just like Destiny said. We also like to combine that with the use of powerful images, because people react really strongly to images and narratives. So we make sure to incorporate that, which is definitely true of the campaign that Destiny did as well, to guide people through the facts and emotionally connect them to them. And on our side is the fact that people generally don't trust large corporations in the United States. They have a very low level of trust to begin with. So if they see that a corporation's engaging in hypocrisy or lying, they're likely to believe that that's true because they have a pretty low estimation of corporate America to begin with.
All right, as the resident lawyer on the call, there are a lot of questions that are on the chat about executive orders and what EPA can do. And let's see if I can sort of sort through those for you. President Biden moved very quickly with executive orders. There's a pro and a con. An executive order, first of all, only governs action by the executive branch, right? And it only governs action during the president's term of office. So one of the things that President Biden did was he got rid of a bunch of the executive orders that President Trump did. So you can move quickly on executive orders, and Joe Biden certainly has. But those can only go so far because they can't supplant the need for legislation. And the duration of them is really only 4 years unless the next president decides to keep them in place. So good movements by President Biden on executive orders. But if you want something that's more durable, more longer lasting, then you need the rulemaking process to be done by US EPA when it comes to clean air, clean water, and climate change standards. And that takes time. There's some really good people at EPA right now. Janet McCabe, who's the deputy director, is just skilled and experienced and really terrific. Full disclosure, after she served as the assistant administrator who was head of air quality and radiation, Janet worked at the Environmental Law and Policy Center for 2 years. Now she's back in the administration as deputy director. She's got all the right expertise. Michael Reagan, the head of the US EPA, very talented as well. So you have people at EPA who can really do the job well, but the Administrative Procedure Act, the process for adopting rules, is just a pretty deliberative, slow process. So watch the clock on that. They're trying to get things moving now. I think they learned the lesson from during the Obama administration. But that stuff just takes time. You can't snap your fingers and try to make it happen. Indeed, that's what President Trump tried to do, and he was reversed by the courts. So the Biden administration is going to make sure they don't, fall into the same rabbit hole. And they want to make the regulations they come out with be fair, reasonable, and legal, and they stick and they take place. Number of other questions about climate science. I think there's terrific climate science knowledge that's available these days. Our local universities have a lot of talent. Check out the folks at our local universities. The IPCC, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, is continually coming out with reports. I'll be candid. I'm not a climate scientist. I don't pretend to be, but I do recognize the realities of climate science. And solving our climate change problems is the moral, the business, the economic, the political, the policy challenge of our generation. We need to move forward. We're going to use that to segue, if you will, into action steps. And the theme of the One Earth Film Festival is turn to action and turn the tide. There's no rehearsal when it comes to climate change. The time is now. It really is now. If you missed it, it's now. We need to get it done. Okay? Let's talk a little bit about just Destiny, Olivia, Todd. What are the couple of things that you think are absolutely most important in terms of action steps? And then after we finish, maybe the good team at the One Earth Film Festival can put up the slide that really lays out a whole series of steps so that people can see that, maybe take a screenshot or download it and get the whole portfolio. What's your most important climate action, Destiny? What should everybody absolutely do?
Look into what you care about. To actually look into it and pay attention to what's going on around you. That's my most important one.
Okay. Let's do it. Pay attention to things you care about, you know about. Look around your neighborhood. Look at your home. Talk with your friends and family. Olivia, most important thing. I know there's a lot, but pick out one.
Mobilize your community through education and action. Invest your values, like Destiny said. Really follow what you believe in and make that an everyday practice.
Todd, microphone to you. Thanks, Olivia.
Sure, thanks. I would encourage people to take action whenever you can. So I know people are really busy in their lives and they often feel like, well, I can't run a whole campaign or something like Destiny did. But you can take action. You can sign petitions. You can share good information about climate change. You can donate to groups. There are all kinds of groups across the country that are doing the kind of work that Destiny's group did to fight locally, and they're dying for money. And if you can afford to donate to those groups, your donation is going to make a huge difference.
All right, let's do this. Anna and the team at the One Earth Film Festival have put together a terrific slide of a lot of steps. I think there are about a dozen to 16. Let's all take a look at that, and probably if you can post it on the One Earth Film Fest site, although I'll bet, Anna, you've already done that already. Let's just focus for a minute on those action steps. If you have a moment, take a screenshot or just pull out your cell phone or a camera and take a quick picture. It's really a great list of things that people can do. All right, let's do some thank yous then. First of all, thank you to the filmmakers, both on Let Us Breathe and on calling out the oil industry on climate change. These are two excellent films, and hopefully a lot more people will be able to see them. Thank you to Destiny Vasquez, who was involved in the campaign on the Southeast side to shut down the General Iron plant. Thank you to Olivia Knight and everything you and your colleagues are doing at As You Sow. And thank you to Todd Larsen and everything that Todd and his colleagues do at Green America. Big thank you and shout out to Anna Garcia Doyle. Anna is the executive director of the One Earth Film Festival, and Anna and her team are doing a terrific job on this. Okay, I'm Howard Lerner. I'm the executive director of the Environmental Law and Policy Center, public interest environmental litigation attorney and policy advocate with a terrific team of people at ELPC. ELPC.org, the Environmental Law and Policy Center. So thank you to everybody who joined us today. Thank you to the three panelists and the filmmakers and Anna and the One Earth Film Festival. Let's put the ball back in your court.
Great. Thank you so much, Howard and team. This was a wonderful conversation, and I think we're just putting up a slide now that helps you all understand how to keep following the important work being done by all of our panelists and by our facilitator, Howard, here today, and to keep supporting that work. So just take a look at this slide. We will be sending you all of this stuff by your email. Everyone who registered will receive a recording of the event today, the Take Action slide, and then this slide about how to keep following our facilitator and panelists and support their work. Thank you all again, Howard, Todd, Olivia, Destiny, and all of you who came today. Have a great afternoon.
You too.